Hello, and welcome to part one of a Q&A series as we discuss some special topics about the importance of therapy for victims of trauma. Here at the Center for Violence Prevention, we offer evidence-based programs for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. And one very important aspect about those programs is that we have our very own licensed therapists who are on staff and specially trained to provide the best care anytime there's a client in need of recovery services. Oftentimes, we notice that clients are a little nervous about this part of their healing journey because they don't really know what to expect, or they're a little nervous revisiting some painful experiences of their past with somebody they don't know. In addition to that, mental health is often neglected because clients are just so busy trying to survive. However, we must remind ourselves that our mental health is just as important as our physical health. And we hope that this video provides some clarity on what it's like whenever you get therapy services with the Center for Violence Prevention. Today on this call, we have our very own therapists, Reagan Owens and Ebony LaFleur Jackson. I'm going to open up the platform and let them introduce themselves to you all today.
I'm Reagan Owen, LPC, and the P stands for provisional, and then LPC stands for licensed professional counselor. And I've been at the center for about a year and a half, coming up on 2 years in July. And the work I do here, my technical title is crisis counselor. So what I do is kind of like a triage, or ER, if you will. We get clients in who have just gone through some sort of domestic violence or sexual assault experience, and we kind of get them to a place where they can cope a little bit better or kind of process a little bit what they've been through in an effort to kind of move them into a place where they can see someone else for longer term care. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
And my name is Ebony LaFleur. I'm also a licensed professional counselor. Officially, I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor. I've been serving in mental health for about 7 years now. I've served at CVP as a mental health therapist for about 4 years. And so I also do the same type of work like Reagan, serving clients who has experienced trauma, those who have experienced domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking. And so that's a little bit about me.
Thank you both so much for sharing a little bit about yourselves for our viewers today. I'm looking forward to this call. I know it's going to bring some much needed information into the spotlight. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to direct that first question to you, Reagan. And then this question, we're talking about trauma. We talk about that word a lot in trying to define trauma. What does that word mean? And so, Reagan, how do you help clients to name emotions or have emotional awareness during sessions?
A lot of people have a difficult time with that part because it's never been modeled for them, naming emotions or being aware of their emotions. A lot of people get modeled in their childhood or just in their daily life, stuffing emotions. And so it's really difficult to name them. So some of the things that I do to help clients name them is, number one, and this is such a typical therapist thing to have, is a feelings wheel. So I've printed this out, I've laminated it. I see some clients who speak Spanish only, so I have it in a Spanish version as well. But basically, you go to the middle and it's happy, sad, mad, or whatever. And then you kind of work your way outward into something a little bit more specific, because if you can name it, you can tame it. So if you know exactly what you're feeling, then that's a starting point, a jumping off point for where we can go and what we can do about it. I also ask my clients often what they're feeling, where they're feeling it in their body, because that can give you hints. Sometimes I'll say, that must feel bad. That must feel, you must have felt betrayed in that moment. You must have felt abandoned. And that can kind of help them give words to what they're feeling. And then journaling also, it's funny. Journaling it seems pretty cliche, but it's really helpful because the more you write and just start writing it, not even knowing what you're writing about, maybe free association type of writing, things come out that you may not even be aware of, that they're inside of you. And so I've seen it happen for myself in journaling. So those are just some of the ways that help clients kind of name what they're feeling.
And I'll say for myself, I when I think about trauma, I looked up the definition of trauma, and I just want to share this, right?
Nice.
So it's pretty much says that trauma is a deeply distressing and overwhelming experience that can have significant and lasting negative effects on a person's mental health, emotional health, and physical health, right? So I first thought, as a therapist here at CVP, we see that all the time. We take on clients who's deeply distressed, right? And so you have to be first, I would say, gifted and trained to handle a client who's deeply distressed,
Yeah.
right? That's the first thing. And then I agree with Reagan. It's so many different ways you can tackle trauma. And I think it has to be specific to the person, right? And what works for them. And then as you kind of go on, you'll discover this works, this doesn't necessarily work. So even simple things, I was thinking, when they first come in, it's so much that they're tangled up in. It's so much that's going on. And so you have to first help them to focus on what we're actually here to do, focus on what's in front of them, focus on what's the goal in mind, help them to de-escalate before you can kind of even go in to identify, right? And so I think it's kind of like a gradual step to get to really process trauma or even address trauma. So, again, it goes back to just being gifted, to really take on a person, not only a person, but the trauma within the person. And so it's a special work. I think, it's CVP. And it's an honor to, for them to even trust us to be able to take on a person
Yeah.
as such. So
Thank you, Ebony. The next question is actually for you. And this is talking a little bit about the reality and the effects of trauma, and why counseling is so important. Oftentimes, people don't realize that some of their trauma is still affecting them from years ago. So let's talk a little bit about this question about the reality and the effects of trauma.
again, trauma can, as you heard me say a few minutes ago, it can impact a person in all types of ways. You first have the physical effects, you have the mental effects, and you have the emotional effects. Physically, you may have a person that comes in and says, I'm just so tired, I'm so fatigued, I can't sleep, I have muscle tension, I have headaches, my heart rate it won't slow down, I have digestive issues, and we have to begin to think, well, that's probably the physical response to trauma, right? Then you also have the emotional, and I always put these two in the same category, emotional slash mental, in a way, category. So they may come and say, I'm super anxious, or I'm angry, or I'm sad, guilty, I'm having a hard time managing my emotions, and some may simply put it, I'm all over the place, right? And so we as a therapist, well, yep, that's probably um a response to trauma, and so here we are having to untangle, and help guide this person through the way of counseling to really address the issues at hand. And so, even the question that's asked when it talks about, why is, counseling even important to really to have. And so it's simply put, counseling um to me, I feel like it helps create a safe space for you to really, or a client rather, to unravel themselves safely, right? They're able to unravel themselves, identify ways to deal with life, because just like Reagan said, this is a short-term type of treatment. And so as a counselor, my first response is, okay, what can I give them that they can take with them, right? What tools? And I always tell the clients, what I want you to take a little piece of me, put me in your pocket, right, and take
Yeah.
me with you. Because at some point, this will come to an end. And so, counseling, it allows the client to become self-aware or more self-aware, build resilience, build relationships, or learn how to better manage relationships. And honestly, sometimes, individuals may come to counseling as the last result, right? But then we could also look at counseling as being a way of early intervention, right? So if we can, we get a client in, when they go back out, sometimes we give them the tools for what's even ahead, which could be good or bad, right? So that's my perspective on, how trauma can affect a person, and also what's the importance of having counseling along with that.
Piggyback off of what you said.
Yeah.
So the reality and the effects of trauma, a lot of times what I see in my clients are unhealthy relationship patterns. And like especially when it comes to attachment, if they have attachment wounds from their childhood,
Yeah.
and they'll find themselves in these, a lot of times our clients especially had abusive childhoods. So then they find themselves in abusive relationships in adulthood. And it's not because they're choosing that, but because that is part of their trauma and a wound that they have. And it just follows them throughout their life. Also, with the physical side of things, a lot of people don't realize that cancer, IBS, migraines, autoimmune disorders can all be caused by trauma, and by trauma kind of held and stored in the body. Processing trauma reduces inflammation and reduces cortisol in your body, which is cortisol is a stress hormone. So that processing through the trauma reduces the amount of cortisol in your body, which can cause, if you have too much cortisol in your body, it causes a multitude of symptoms. Number one, inflammation, but also difficulty sleeping and all the things that Ebony mentioned before. So, and then as far as why counseling is important, breaking those generational cycles is very important. Not only for our client, but also for our clients' children, if they have any, or the people that our client comes in contact with. Sometimes people have never had a healthy relationship with healthy boundaries and healthy dynamics. And so that therapeutic relationship may be the only time that they ever experience that. And so they can take what they learn from that relationship and kind of generalize it into the relationships in the rest of their life. Not only that, but that we may be the only person that's ever stopped to listen to them and give the honor and the importance to their story. Having your story heard, being heard by somebody else is so important for healing, because it tells you that you're worth me listening. You're worth my time for me to sit with you and listen to you and feel what you feel at the same time. Validating feelings so that our clients know that they're not crazy for feeling the way they do. So these are just some of the things, and I'm sure there's a million different more that I didn't talk about, of reasons why counseling is super important.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for that response. The next question is for you, Reagan. It's talking about grounding strategies. So what grounding strategies do you recommend for clients, and why are they helpful?
Yeah. The ones that I use most often with my clients are meditations and visualizations. I find that clients really take a liking to those, because they can kind of, your brain doesn't know the difference between your imagination and reality when you're imagining with such detail as you do in these visualizations. So when you're using all five senses in the visualization, you're actually calming, your body reacts as if you're actually there, which can bring you down out of a heightened state, or up out of a numb state, and get you present, which is what grounded means: present in the present moment, grounded in the present moment and where you are now, rather than, anxiety is worried about the future, depression is worrying about the past. So if you can get present where you're safe, nothing's after you right now, in this moment in my office, you're safe and you're calm, then it's like, oh, you're right, I am. Also 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, um, 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Just kind of using your senses is very important for grounding. Also exercise. I'm really into fitness. I love to exercise. Well, I don't love it necessarily. I just like the results I get. And also it benefits my mental health. I've found that for myself, but it's incredibly grounding too, because if you're out of breath while you're exercising, you're focused on your breath, which is what grounding is. If you feel like you can't breathe while you're working out because it's so intense, great. You're focused on your breath, and you're not focused on all the other things that are creating this tornado inside your head. And so, doing that as often as you can, kind of, it's just if nothing else, just a respite from the constant weight of worry and stress that our clients often have to deal with.
The purpose of it, is like she said, to really help enhance an individual's ability to focus and concentrate, and kind of really develop emotional regulation. So, they may be saying, why am I counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? What is that? What is that? What am I doing this for? And so having to remind them that, okay, it's not just counting down, but this is the reason why we're counting down. So grounding is a very, very powerful tool as well, especially within trauma.
Well, that's really good information about grounding strategies. Thank you both so much. This brings us to question 4, and that's for you, Ebony. And this one's talking about setting goals, helping clients to move forward and think ahead for the future. So, what's the process for setting goals for therapy with clients?
When it comes to goal setting, we pretty much term it as SMART goals, right? So once we kind of bring the client in, do our assessment, shortly after we go into treatment planning. And within treatment planning, we develop SMART goals. So what does SMART goals stand for, right? So of course we want to help the client, and this is not us telling the client this is your goal. This is us collaborating with the client to help them develop the goal that they want to accomplish and meet, right? So SMART goals, we try to be sure that the S, of course, is for specific. We want to be sure that we're helping the client identify specific goals. We're not running over here and running over there. We're like, okay, what is the goal in mind? Measurable. We want to be sure that we create goals that they can actually obtain, right? We don't want to, and we can kind of go and watch and monitor the progress, right? So we want to be sure we can measure what's going on. Achievable. Once again, we want to be sure that as we come up with goals or create goals, that they can actually achieve the goal, right? So a person coming in fresh from trauma, we may not expect them to be completely anxiety all the way down to to 0. We may just want to get them to 5, right? And then we go from 5 to 0, so we want to be sure they can actually reach the goal. And then also create a goal that's relevant. Okay, make sure that they, that we need, it's relevant, it's the need for that goal. And then also being sure that we have goals that are time sensitive. And so that's the SMART goal that we're going for. And so again, as I was kind of thinking about SMART goals, we want to be sure that we break the goal down. The smaller increments the better. And because a lot of times our clients who coming in with trauma and so much, the last thing they need on the list is a big goal. Right. The last thing they need is for us to say, well, we need you to do 10 things and have them done in 2 days. Well, that's a bit much, right? So the smaller the better. And then also, I was kind of reading on SMART goals, and it talked about being sure that we give the client a start and an end date, right? Because sometimes in counseling, we're like, okay, we start good, but then we don't always know where we're headed. We just kind of going with it. We don't really know what's the end going to be, and so, and also preparing them for challenges along the way. So even as we develop SMART goals, yeah, we want to be sure they're smart, right, and that we can get them to where they need to be, but also letting them know that just like anything, just like life, nothing is straight in a row. Okay, so you may have some hurdles, some setbacks, but remember the SMART goal in mind. So that's kind of the general overview when it comes to goal setting within mental health.
Ebony, that's such a wonderful reminder about goals in life not always being linear. Sometimes it's not linear, it's a little bit of this zigzagging approach, and also reminding clients to make goals that are attainable. Thank you so much for sharing that information. This brings us to question 5, and this is for Reagan. And that is discussing how you process with the trauma that is still in the body. This is a very particular one because sometimes it gets that deep during sessions, right? So Reagan, how do you deal with trauma that is stuck in the body with clients?
There's lots of ways. So one of my favorites, and I know Ebony's glad I get to talk about this because
Oh
she
yeah,
doesn't
that's
super like
her.
it.
That's her thing.
But is called EMDR. And it is a newer kind of therapeutic modality treatment, if whatever you want to call it. And it stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Basically, it's just I'm not even going to try and go and explain the whole process of it. If that's something that anyone's is interested in, definitely look into it, do some research, ask your therapist about it. But basically, it just changes the neural pathways in your mind, so in your brain. So our neurons, the cells in our brain are connected. And over the course of our lives, we make connections based on our experiences. Those wounds that I was talking about earlier, those are connections in our brain. And um, the more your brain goes down a pathway, the easier it's going to become and the more second nature it'll become. So, but sometimes they're not helpful pathways, like things like maybe a client has heard so much in their life, oh, you're stupid, you're worthless, you're worthless. So now they have that neural pathway in their mind, I'm stupid, I'm worthless, I'm worthless. And that's not helpful for them because it's not true, number one, and number two, it's not going to help them reach their goals. So
Right.
what we do with EMDR is we kind of reduce the strength of that pathway. And then we also try to increase the strength of another pathway that is more beneficial for them. And again, that collaboration comes into play with that of I'm not going to tell a client, oh, you should believe this instead. I'm going to say, what would you rather believe instead? So that's EMDR in a not great nutshell.
No, you
But
did great. You did great.
it's very complicated and complex and there's a lot of science involved. So if anyone's interested, I would definitely encourage them to go and do some research and look into it, read some articles and
Yeah.
stuff. But there's also lots of other ways. Again, back to exercise. You can kind of EMDR yourself with exercise because it's that bilateral stimulation, stimulating both sides of your brain by stimulating both sides of your body. So kind of while you think about traumatic experiences, and then, somatic therapy is something I'm really interested in, is just kind of the different places that trauma can be stored in your body, how to release it, what to do with that. It's not something I'm trained in, but I would like to be trained in later on. And then trauma informed massage is something that came up recently in a group of mine that I do. One of my clients went and got a trauma informed massage, and she was kind of shocked at how effective it was because our muscles can tense. Muscle tension from anxiety is that anxiety living in your body. And so there's lots of times where we have muscles that are tense that we're not even aware of. And so a masseuse can go in and massage it and release the tension that's there, which may in turn release the emotion that's hidden in that muscle. So some people cry in a massage session like that.
Thank you, Reagan, for sharing a little bit more about EMDR. I've heard a lot of really good things about that lately, a lot of success stories, and maybe some people today are hearing about it for the first time. So thank you for introducing that topic to them online. That actually brings us to the end of part one. We've covered a lot of really good information on this call today. If you feel that any of this applied to you, or if you are curious to learn more about this information, please visit our website at msc4vp.org. This will also be shared in the caption of this video. Our texting line is 601-954-1724. If you're ever in a situation and you don't want to talk on the phone, you can text that at any time. Thank you for being here, and we hope that you take the next step for your healing journey.